some time ago. I think it might even be in Vancouver now, somebody was telling me. And it's a mirror of that. And again, when you look at other depictions of Egyptian royalty, no wonder they had big bloody hats, you know. This elongated head. And one of the things that Credo said to me, he said, look, he said, there's still black African tribes today, you might have heard of them, who when their children are born, they bind their heads to elongate the skull. And he said, when I've gone to them and said, why do you put your children through this agony? The reply is, because they have to look like the gods. And it's interesting, you see that elongated skull. This is from the Cairo Museum, just down from the Giza pyramids. This is a skull, I think this was found in South America. This was found in South America, again, the same thing. What I'm saying here is that there is far more to life and where we've come from and where we are than ever we are being told. Again, as Credo said, you know, whether they had big heads or not, they were imitating the gods with these big, high headgear. So, let's get down to it, shall we? Let's get down to it. So I then started thinking, okay, extraterrestrials, gods, interbreeding, bloodlines. And I wasn't really thinking, what did they look like? Because obviously your initial thought is, well, they must have looked like us then. And then I started on about 18 months ago, an amazing series of coincidences all over the world. People were coming up to me and telling me how they had seen people, overwhelmingly in positions of power, though not always, turn in front of their eyes into a reptilian humanoid figure and then go back again. And of course you hear one and you think, ooh. And you hear two and you think, oh my God, back burner. You hear 3, you hear 4, you hear 5, you hear 6 in different countries. 7, 8, 10, 20, 30. On my website, davidicke.com, there's 3,000 web pages now, and there's a whole area called the Reptilian Archive where people put their ancient and modern knowledge, research, and experiences, if you want to see how much there is to support some of this stuff. And so the story went that in 15 days, in one period, I met 12 separate people in 12 separate places who told me of this experience. Now, they were from many, many different walks of life. And I'm thinking, ooh, on the back burner, but I'll watch for this. This is strange. I then go to England, and I meet someone who I was due to meet to tell me about satanic ritual, which is fundamentally connected to this, as you'll see this afternoon. She was the wife of the head keeper of a place called Burnham Beeches, which is owned by the City of London, which is the epicenter of operational Illuminati control. And it's a forest area with a few clearings. And because she was the wife of the warden, and she says, my husband was a Satanist. That's why he got the job, because of the Satanism the elite did on that Burnham Beeches area at night. She said, and one day, she said, I'm walking through the forest, and I saw a light. She said, I went through to see what the light was, and she said, I saw a satanic circle where all the usual horrors were going on. And she said, I was astonished to see that the man I was looking at conducting it was Ted Heath. Now, Ted Heath was the Prime Minister of Britain between 1970 and 74, and was the man that took us into the European Community, now Union. And she talked about one of his Chancellor of the Exchequer at the time, Anthony Barber, was next to him in this circle. And she explained what happened and all that stuff. And so I'm thinking, wow, this is amazing stuff. Anyway, we talk about it. And then I'm just finishing the conversation. I'm putting my cup of tea down. Thank you very much. I've just come back from America in this experience of 15 days. And I just threw away a line at her. I said, do you know, it's a bloody strange experience. I keep meeting people that have seen people turn into reptiles. And I turned to go. And I heard this, like that. I turned around. She's having a bloody seizure. She said, oh, my God. She said, I thought it was only me. She said, oh, my God, I wasn't going to tell you that bit. And she explains how she saw this guy, Ted Heath, during this circle, turn, shapeshift into a reptilian humanoid figure. And she said, you know the thing that fazed me most? No one else in the circle seemed at all bothered, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. I then get invited to go to the House of Lords to meet some lords to talk about the conspiracy, which they know is going on. They just want to talk to me about it. And there was a woman there, and she was saying some very interesting things about Diana. You know, Diana, Princess of Wales and stuff. Princess of Wales. And after the meeting, I said to her, "Hey, I want to talk to you. We've got to talk." She says, "We have." I said, "How do you know this about Diana?" She says, "Well, my closest friend was Diana's closest confidant for 9 years." She says, "I think I can get her to talk to you." So we talked. I talked with this lady. I didn't go to see this confidant of Diana to talk about shape-shifting reptiles. I'm hoping this thing might go out of my life and just kind of, you know, be a strange phase. Because, I mean, do I want to stand up and say about reptiles? Well, I don't really bother, but I'd rather not. Anyway, we're talking, and she's telling me about the horrific things that happened to Diana in relation to the Windsors and how the Windsors take people out and stuff like that. Anyway, he then says to me, "Do you know what Diana's nickname for the Windsors was?" I said, "No, go on." She said, "The reptiles and the lizards." And she said, Diana used to say to me, in all seriousness, "They're not human." And she said, you know the Windsors are a reptilian bloodline. And I'm thinking, not a friggin' nother. And she explained, because this lady is a healer, and she worked not only with Diana, but with other members of the aristocracy and the lower levels of the royal family. And she picked up a heck of a lot of knowledge in this. It's amazing how many people know about this. It doesn't go to the public arena, because, I mean, who's going to have the guts to stand up on a stage and say that reptiles run the world? I mean, who's going to do it? No one's ever going to do it. We're never going to find out, are we? So this went on and on and on. If you look in the Reptilian Archive of my website, you'll see just the constantly added stuff. The number of people that have had this experience blows me away. And the name that comes up more than any other, George Bush. There's a book by a lady called Kathy O'Brien, and she sees this as a holographic image. But when you put it together with all the other evidence, maybe there's another explanation here. She wrote this book in the early 1990s. Before I was into any of this stuff. And when this started coming into my life, I thought, hold on a minute. I'm sure I read something about reptiles in that book. So I'm flicking through it, feeling a right prat, looking for reptiles in the index. There it was, about 4 references. And she talked about how George Bush had told her that they were an extraterrestrial race that had taken over the planet. No one knew it because they looked human. And how he turned into a reptile in front of her. Now, of course, understandably, in these mind control projects, you think, oh, well, you know, it's a holographic image. It can't be actually literally true. But when you get this other stuff, suddenly it takes on a different light. She also talked about being with a guy called Miguel de la Madrid, who was president of Mexico during the Bush years. And she tells at some greater length in the book how Miguel de la Madrid told her the story of what he called the iguana race. He told her that an extraterrestrial race of reptilian origin came to the Earth and needed bodies, as he put it, to work through, to operate through. And how they interbred with the ancient Mexican people, because this happened all over the world, creating hybrid bloodlines, and that these bloodlines could take either human or reptilian form. And to quote her own book, he added, perfect for world leaders. And more recently, I've met more and more people who have come from the inside and said the reptilians are behind the Illuminati. And it's interesting that when you go back, as I did, I thought, well, you know, time as we know it, a few thousand years, is actually nothing in truth. So if it's happening now, there must be references to it in the ancient world. Well, if you're looking for references to a serpent race, serpent people, snake people, it's absolutely friggin' enormous in the ancient world. And one example, the Nagas, the gods of the ancient Indus Valley, they said about them they could take either human or reptilian form. And it kind of sounds kind of amazing, but I was watching a film the other day, and someone said on that film, the difference between an ape and a human is 3% DNA. You know, and as I think it was Carl Sagan said, there are more potential combinations of DNA than there are atoms in the universe. this is the only humanoid form that's going to exist and evolve from that enormous infinity. Come on. And who dominated this planet for so long? He said, there's still black African tribes today, you might have heard of them, who when their children are born, they bind their heads to elongate the skull. And he said, when I've gone to them and said, why do you put your children through this agony? The reply is, because they have to look like the gods. And it's interesting, you see that elongated skull. This is from the Cairo Museum, just down from the Giza Pyramid some time ago. I think it might even be in Vancouver now, somebody was telling me. And it's a mirror of that. And again, when you look at other depictions of Egyptian royalty, no wonder they had big bloody hats, you know. This elongated head. And one of the things that Credo said to me, he said, look, headgear. So, let's get down to it, shall we? Let's get down to it. So I then started thinking, okay, extraterrestrials, gods, interbreeding, bloodlines. And I wasn't really thinking, what did they look like? Because pyramids. This is a skull, I think this was found in South America. This was found in South America. Again, the same thing. What I'm saying here is that there is far more to life and where we've come from and where we are than ever we are being told. Again, as Credo said, you know, whether they had big heads or not, they were imitating the gods with these big, high... obviously, your initial thought is, well, they must have looked like us then. And then I started on about 18 months ago, an amazing series of coincidences all over the world. People were coming up to me and telling me how they had seen people, overwhelmingly in positions of power, though not always, turn in front of their eyes into a reptilian